This story is about two young boys who grew up in the same hood. One boy's name was Frank, and the other was named Joe. Frank came from a family of five, three boys and two girls. They did not have very much, but what they did have was love, unity, and respect. No matter what kind of problems the family faced, they handled them within their loving home. That is called unconditional love. Joe came from a family of six, five boys and one girl. Like Frank's family, they also did not have very much. However, unlike Frank's family, they did not have unity. They were put down and told one is better than the other, which caused separation. Joe's family had more love for outsiders than their own siblings. But despite their family differences, Frank and Joe were the best of friends. Frank and Joe would walk to and from junior high school together every day, as best friends often do, talking about their dreams of becoming something in life. But one day, while in school, Frank and Joe overheard one of the other kids in their school name-calling some of their classmates. The kid who was name-calling was known for being a bully. Frank didn't like what he saw, but Joe thought it was fine. In fact, he liked the attention the bully was getting and wished more people would pay attention to him, unlike his family. On their way home from school, Joe started name-calling Frank, thinking he'd find it funny. But all it did was make Frank upset, so he started calling him names back. Both of them were name-calling, to the point where they stopped walking to and from school together, and they no longer talked to each other. Eventually, Frank and Joe stopped being friends. As they got older, Frank mixed new friends with people who had the same unity, values, and morals as his family. Joe, however, makes friends with boys who come from families like his, families with no love, respect, or unity. He was hanging out with bullies because it made him feel important. Joe thought this was what unity and love really was, and turned into the thing that every school nowadays seems to have: a bully. Who are these bullies? Bullies are people who don't feel important and want everybody's attention. Joe is an example of how bullies are formed. Starting in high school, Frank and Joe had nothing in common. Frank's friends were at home doing what most families do: studying, watching television, eating dinner together, and talking about their dreams. Joe and his friends were always hanging out in the streets, finding ways to escape home. Family wasn't important because they did not feel love, unity, or respect. One day, Frank saw Joe from afar and noticed he was hanging out with the same boy who, when they were in junior high school, called other kids names and was acting like a bully. Frank became concerned about Joe. He still cared about him even though they were no longer friends. He wanted him to stop being a bully. He said to himself, "Joe's in trouble and I must help him." Frank called all his family members and friends together for a meeting. As he thought about Frank, he thought about how he became a bully and realized that bullies look for followers. Without followers, there would be no bullies. How can we help people think like leaders and not like followers? Frank said. When Frank thought of Joe and all the dreams he used to talk to him about, he asked what people who thought like leaders have in common. He explained that in order to have future generations become doctors, nurses, lawyers, policemen, firemen, teachers, scientists, skilled workers such as truck drivers and construction workers, they have to have goals. Frank's friends thought he was crazy to think he could stop bullying, but one of them said, "I think it's possible, but you have to find a way to change people's minds." "Now you're thinking," Frank said. "That's why I called you all together. We all think like leaders who want the best for ourselves and others around us. Frank's mom and dad had been sitting on the sidelines quietly as Frank and his friends discussed these issues around followers and bullying. Frank's mom had something to say. Bullies are like a wild herd of horses following the leader and running at full force. When the leader comes to a cliff, there is no way to stop the herd. The bully knows they've led the herd the wrong way. They also know they're going over a cliff too. Frank and his friends pondered for a moment on what his mom said before she continued. The moral of the story is, think like a leader, not a follower. If bullying could stop, the herd would stop. And if the herd stopped, they would live. Frank's dad also had something to say. Have you ever seen a pack of dogs walking up the freeway ramp? One dog is leading the others into self-destruction, just like bullies lead their followers. One of Frank's siblings said, outside of schools, bullies are in the drug business. The leader wants the follower to sell and use drugs so the money that is made can stay in their control. The bully who uses the follower gets to control the money and the other bullies. Without drugs, a bully might quit using, buying, and selling and start thinking like a leader with goals and not a follower. A friend said, I wonder if bullies know they are killing our forefathers' dreams that they had for us as a country. If you think like a leader, you could see the bullies are destroying themselves, innocent people, and future generations. Someone else asked, how do you know you're a follower? The group pondered on that question for a while. How does someone know they're a follower? As a group, they spent some time coming up and listing some traits of followers. Number 1, if you're always saying everyone else is doing it. Number 2, if you act tough when friends are around. Number 3, if you do not have your own style of dress and wear gang styles, now you're a target. Number 4, followers don't pursue their own dreams. Number 5, if you dislike someone because others do not like him or her. Number 6, if you cut class because everyone else does. Number 7, if you are fighting other people's battles. Number 8, if you don't have respect for yourself and others. Number 9, if you can't go anywhere by yourself. Number 10, they don't do their own thinking. Good answers, said Frank's father. You are all leaders and we expect great things from you. Continue to lead by example and others will follow. Frank said, you never know who will help you one day. Maybe it will be the person that everybody disliked. That's why it is good to think like a leader and not a follower. They might end up being your boss one day. As the group continued to talk about people that think like leaders, they agreed that thinking like a leader leads to success. They listed qualities of people who think like leaders. Number 1, they have self-respect and respect for others. Number 2, leaders pursue their dreams. Number 3, they set goals and use their own minds. Number 4, they think like business people. Number 5, they are able to identify followers. Number 6, they resist peer pressure. Number 7, they have high self-esteem. Number 8, they have morals and values. Number 9, they are disciplined. Number 10, they believe in teamwork. As they concluded, Frank thanked his parents for letting him host the meeting in their home. Frank was left feeling optimistic about what he, his friends, and family discussed. While Frank, his friends, and family members were holding a meeting, Joe was bullying. At this point in time, he had a bad reputation at school, and people were scared of him. There were rumors of him stealing cars and even going to jail. As Joe continued to harm others, it brought down his appearance. He was wearing baggy pants with his underwear showing and almost looked like a different person altogether. Days after the meeting, while at school, Frank came across Joe. As he looked at who he was now, a bully, the rumors, wearing what he was wearing, he thought to himself this could not be the same Joe he knew, the Joe who had so many dreams of becoming something or somebody in this life. He thought back to why they stopped being friends, the name calling, and thought it was so stupid. He still hoped he could help him. On his way home, Frank was waiting at the bus stop. Suddenly, 5 bullies walked up closely to Frank as he waited for the bus. One asked, "What set you from?" Frank stood silent. He was scared and didn't know what to say. "What's up, Frank?" Someone else who walked up suddenly said. It was Joe. The bully leader turned towards Joe and said, "You know him?" "Yeah, he's an old friend," Joe said. Joe looked at Frank, who was still silent, and he could tell Frank was scared. Joe leaned closely to the bully leader and whispered something in his ear. "Let's roll," the leader said suddenly, and they all kept walking, with Joe alongside. As they walked away, Frank breathed a sigh of relief that he was safe. He stared at Joe's back as he walked away, just to see if he would look back, but he didn't. That was the last time Frank heard from Joe. When Frank eventually came home and told his family what happened, they were relieved that Joe showed up to save Frank. Now, especially, they understood why it was important to come up with a plan to stop bullying. Frank's family and friends started putting together a petition for 2 programs to combat bullying: the Bully Program and the Grassroots Gang Intervention Program. As the petition gained more signatures, they eventually gathered enough to vote it into a law that would affect every school in the United States. The Bully Program uses a prevention method that Frank came up with called the Secret Bully Box. With secret bully boxes in every school, it allows people to put in and submit the names of kids in that school who are being bullies, and those people remain anonymous. The bullies do not know who turned in their names. The school counselor looks at the bully box, sees who the bully is, and calls them into their office and shows them a video about the right path and the wrong path. The counselor also gives the bully the book Think Like a Leader, Not a Follower, and asks them to read it. The counselor and the bullying student review the book at a later date. The counselor then monitors the student's behavior throughout the school term. Every school's website also has a bully box online, so anyone can report bullies. The program will help save many people from dropping out of school. While going through the program, students' minds are conditioned to think about their goals in life. The Grassroots Gang Intervention Program states that for people ages 13 to 18 and are cited 4 times for gang involvement, you must go to the military for 1 year. But instead of going to war, you go to recondition your mind. Retired servicemen volunteer to re-enlist and teach their respective skills to help mold the minds and skills of grassroots program members. The program will use non-active military facilities to maximize their learning experiences. When the law came into effect, no one wanted to be called a follower. With the law in effect, the bullies that plagued schools in the United States for so long were transforming into leaders. People who did not have loving families or did not have a father and mother no longer had an excuse. The program was there for them, and there for those in need of love and respect. The school's secret bully prevention program helped solve a big problem for everyone. Now, children can go to school and learn in a safe environment. Years had gone by, and Frank and his friends were ready to graduate high school. One day, while at home, Frank received a call. "What's up, Frank?" Frank couldn't believe it. It was Joe. Joe went on to explain that he was now in the military and had received help from the Grassroots Gang Intervention Program. Joe went on to thank Frank for saving him and so many others from self-destruction. "We had gray clouds over our heads, but now sunshine has come," Joe said. "We are all treated with love, respect, and we have unity." Frank was so happy for Joe. Joe was his inspiration for starting the program, and he was glad to see it have a positive impact on his life. He thought back to the last time he saw Joe before today, when he stood scared at the bus stop. It prompted him to ask Joe a question. "Joe, I've always wondered, what did you whisper to the bully leader that day that made him walk away?" "He's like a brother to me," Joe replied. Several years later, Frank goes on to run for state legislator so he can make laws and bring about change. Some of his friends and family also became politicians, with one even becoming a mayor. The bully prevention program continued its work and stopped many young people from following each other off the cliff of bully violence. As for Joe, he had left the military. He now has a family and drives trucks for a living. He now has the life he dreamed of when he and Frank were young boys.
If anyone tells you to do something negative, you tell them to think like a leader, not a follower. If you're thinking like a copycat, you're thinking like a follower.